And of course, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you listen or watching from in the world. Of course, welcome back to the You Turned Up Show right here on GBKM FM. And I'm your host, Main Redman, and we'll be going until 4 p.m. right here. So, of course, don't miss. We go from 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. on all our platforms. You can, of course, get us on Facebook, it's GBKM TV. Also, Great Benny Kingdom Media. You can also get us on YouTube, it's GBKM TV. Don't forget our website, www.gbkm.fm. And the newest addition to our platform is, of course, our app, which is available on all your app downloading stores. You can get us on Apple Store or you can get us on the Play Store and take us with you wherever you go in the world. And the beauty about our app is you can, of course, combine all our features from all our platforms into one place. How great is that, right? But that's how we do it here at GBKM FM. If you're just joining us for the very first time, though, welcome to the show. If you're returning with us, welcome back. Of course, as we always like to do on the show, is just aim to empower, energize, and of course, get our youth going for the future that is ahead of them. Of course, this week we promise a very, very wonderful show. Black History Month, and this is our official Black History Month kickoff. Of course, we're being celebrated this year under the theme "The Future is Now." The future is now, and it can't wait. Of course, we can't wait to have black racism being diminished in our society and completely eliminated. We can't wait to have all those systems that prevent true inclusion from being eradicated from existence. And of course, we are leading that fight. The youth is here as a part of the Return to Show to, of course, lead the charge in ensuring that we have a much better and inclusive Canada going forward into the future. So you don't want to miss today's show. So much amazing guests have passed through. And of course, our very own Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth will be joining us, the Honorable Bardis Chager. And of course, you definitely don't want to miss that discussion, as we'll also be joined in the second half of the program by President of the Ontario Black History Society, Miss Natasha Henry. So we'll take a very first break, but we'll be right back with so much more after these messages.
You can officially download our free GBKM app from the App Store and the Google Play Store, okay? Now, what is the best thing about this app? Well, it is that you have all of the features from the website that is portable, in your hand, ready to use and ready to go. Now, I'm just gonna guide you through what we have available on our app right now. So here, this is the page where you can watch our live TV, our GBCam TV. You can watch live, enjoy the shows live. Now, if you go to our tabs, you can check out any shows you missed in the past shows tab, and that takes you to the past shows that have happened in the last week. And if you just scroll down, you can see those past shows in order, chronological order, with their dates next to them as well. So if you've missed a show, no worries, just go to the past show tab and you can catch up on your favorite GBKM entertainment. Going back to our menus tab again, you can check out our upcoming shows so you do not miss any past shows. You can check out our breaking news section, which is our newest section as well, to learn of any breaking news within the diaspora, across the globe, all of that good stuff, so you can stay engaged and up to date on what's going on with our breaking news tab on the GBKM app, and also available on the website. And as you can see, there are other tabs there. You can listen to our live radio, our live TV. You can learn more about our on-air personalities by going to our OAP tab.
And of course, welcome back to the show right here on GBKM FM. Of course, I'm your host, Romain Redman. If you're just joining us, you haven't missed anything. And as we always do it here, even if you do miss something, it's posted on all our platforms, and you can also check out our repeats throughout the entire week. So this year, it's the official 2021 Black History Month celebration. What does that look like in 2021? Is there a greater call for everything to be resolved this year? Or are we just still on that shifty, nifty path towards getting real solutions towards some of the problems that just blocks through true inclusion in our society? Well, today my guests here in studios, well, we're not in studios as I am currently quarantining due to the fact that I recently come in contact with someone who tested positive for the virus. But in true spirit of responsibility, I'm doing as the health professionals dictate: stay home, get myself tested, and of course, stay safe. And I encourage you to do the very same as well. But of course, without any further ado, I want to just bring in my very first panelist here, Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth, the Honorable Bardish Chager. And of course, welcome to the show, Bardish. You said to call it that before, so I'm going to stick with that.
That's my name.
And of course, I must say welcome to the show here. Today is a very special one here for us because it's Black History Month. We're celebrating.
We should be celebrating not only because it's Black History Month, but it's the 25th anniversary of Black History Month officially being celebrated in Canada. I remember that December 1995 when the House of Commons supported and passed the official call to action to have this month recognized as Black History Month. And I never thought that I would be here talking with you and all your
Absolutely.
listeners 25 years later in celebration of this milestone. Yes, we've made some progress, but we clearly have a lot more work to do.
And today, of course, we're here to talk about those progress that you need to make and those that we have already made. And I wanted to send a huge shout out and thank you to the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, who pioneered this effort 25 years ago. Round of applause, of course, for her, who saw the need and, of course, took steps to ensure that it's not just a legacy. It's not a legacy, but this is Canadian history being recognized. But of course, Minister, this year theme, the future is now. I want you to just give us a premise behind why you chose that theme this year, why that theme was chosen this year.
This theme was actually chosen in collaboration and communication with elected members of parliament, Black MPs, with caucus colleagues, with team members, and the list goes on because the future is now. Now is the time that we need to act. We need to ensure that we're collecting disaggregated data. We need to be making strategic investments to ensure that every individual can realize their potential. And I think about also just, the giants that have laid the foundation as to where we are and the shoulders that so many of us and so many members of the Black community refer to and stand on. Their future is now. So
Yes.
we need to continue doing this work. So there's many different ways of looking at this theme, but it was the one that resonated. It was the one that was chosen, and it is the one that we are celebrating. It's the one that we're going to continue to build upon.
Let's dive into that discussion. Of course, we are currently in the decade for people of African descent. Of course, it ranged from 2015 to 2024. But those objectives and those goals, though, just give us a status update on what Canada has done to essentially honor those goals which have been put out. And it's not just honoring those goals because those are baseline, but the concrete efforts which have Canada has recognized for we are the country for inclusion, we are the country for diversity. As a matter of fact, we should have been leading the way before the decade even came into full recognition.
And that's very true. And I think that's where I was really proud to be part of the government under the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to recognize the decade. And I think that's where when some of the investments came in, whether it was investing in youth, Black youth and communities, it was important that we do it in a way that actually was about not just empowering community, but enabling community. The whole concept of, nothing about us without us. And I, as you can see, am not a member of the Black community, but I do know that I've had many conversations with people from coast to coast to coast, and even just within my own networks, just real talk of saying, hold on a second. What we need is the opportunity to be able to succeed, and not just in social programs, but in economic forums, in every single segment of society. We need to be able to shine. And I think that's why most recently launching the Black Entrepreneurship Program was really exciting. And what for me is exciting about that program, because I used to be a former minister of small business as well under this government, was
Yes.
that we actually want it led by community for community. And it's also the way that we're delivering a lot of the programs that the federal government has invested in, that your tax dollars are investing in, is actually looking at people who are on the ground, communities that are Black led, Black run, so that they actually know who do we invest in, know how to get into people's backyards, so that we can actually be working with, I would say, networks that we haven't always worked with. And then something else that our government's doing, which is part of the decade as well, is collecting data. And this pandemic, COVID-19, has definitely shot a lot light on a lot of the cracks that exist. So I want to say to you, Romaine, thank you for doing your part and taking it
Yes.
seriously. I hope It was really good to hear you talk about the different apps and the different opportunities you have created to make sure that you can connect with more people. We
Yes.
also have launched the COVID alert app so that people know if they've come across contact with someone, so that you can be safe and those around you can be safe. So I really
Wonderful. And I love the fact, sorry, go ahead.
no.
No, and I'm saying I love the fact that you spoke about this need to collect data, because data is, of course, essential for how we make policies. This data is essential for how we carry out policies, right? And you did, of course, launch the GBA Plus. You did also commission, the government rather also commissioned a number of other data collecting agencies and programs just to ensure that all voices and all people are adequately represented. I mean, we are very far from uh, the notion that color blindness is the way forward. Absolutely not.
Every individual is exactly who they are, and we really do need to let every person be their true authentic selves with everything that they come with. And I think that's where my portfolio, the as a Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth, is very relevant. I remember when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appointed me as a Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth, many people said, is this virtue signaling? Like, is this something that's necessary? And it's unfortunate when people don't recognize the realities of what individuals are going through and the true experiences of individuals. And that's why, as we have brought forward also the anti-racism strategy, as well as the anti-racism secretariat. And when we're developing policies now, the anti-racism secretariat is not a stop on the way. It is part of that policy development process, so that we can actually ensure that those very people that for far too long we've been leaving behind are actually part of who we're considering when we're having those outcomes. And the data, you're absolutely correct, is instrumental, because we might think that we're going to have outcomes, but if, unless we measure them, we don't know that. So we need to be able to see that information and then be able to course correct as necessary. And my background is science. So I believe in
Yes,
evidence based decision making.
absolutely.
So for me, that was one of the many reasons that I joined this team under this prime minister, was because we have stopped making decisions based on ideology like the previous government did.
Yes.
We're making our decisions based on evidence and science. And that's why with this current pandemic, it's so challenging because it is a novel coronavirus. No one has experienced this before. It is very new, and evidence and science is constantly changing. But as long as we continue to respond and react and take it seriously, we will beat this virus and we will beat it together.
So now let us talk a little bit more here about the mandate that you do have, because if for anyone like myself, political and economic buffs like myself, we do read those letters when they get published, and also the supplementary which you were given just a month ago, I think, and it did outline the government's plans or the mandate essentially the prime minister gave you essentially to ensure that we build capacity also in the black community. And when we talk about building capacity, what does that look like from the from the government's perspective? Because my understanding of what capacity building means might be different from what the prime minister thinks or the cabinet thinks is what Canada requires at this time. What does that translate into?
So what I would say capacity, just empowering, but enabling members of the community and organizations that serve community to be able to do the work they do. Not having to go to bed every night and wake up in the morning as to how am I going to provide these supports to my clientele and the people who need me. So giving them the ability to have the programs and the staff and resources they need to deliver.
And
Because
essentially go move towards a state of blacks really determining their future.
yeah,
Wonderful in that sense. But let us pivot on this here a bit too, because last summer we saw this massive youth-led movement across the world to really have a lot of these that we're talking about here resolved. They want it by the end of summer, but of course, we understand from the policy perspective that things do take time, right? Dismantling prevailing systems do take time. When we talk about really investing and seeing results from our investment, that takes time. And if we're talking about it in the economic term, that's months, that's 18 months, 2 years, 5 years plan, right? So let us go into that to over 200 million, which was given last year. And what other plans? Because we also, and yourself and me, you probably didn't recognize that I was there, but we also launched that 2.5 million. essential spending or a gift to the black girls and women in terms of developing their abilities and their capacities just 2 nights ago.
Yes, I didn't know that you were there. What a
I'm
fab!
all over. I'm all over. Just think that.
Love the fact that you are everywhere, and you should be. I would have to say, like, I'm from Waterloo, Ontario, and so I should just acknowledge that I'm on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Neutral people. And I think as a country, we don't always know where we come from, so it's hard to know where we're going. And I think that's part of the acknowledgement is actually getting to know what our history is, clearer vision as to where we're going. And even for me, this Black History Month, part of my information and part of my comments that I will continuously share is that Black Canadians have been here for over 400 years, well before Canada was even Canada. And this
Yeah.
is not something that I learned in school, but I do want to make sure that we get there. And I think the more I speak to Black youth and I speak to young Canadians, this is what they're talking about. They want to know the history of our country and they want to know it by community members so that they can actually broaden their horizons and be the true leaders that they are. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they are the leaders of today. There's a different way of having a conversation with young people. So we want to empower that, and that's why we do have a youth policy for the first time in the history of our country. We are been speaking to young people from coast to coast to coast, and we'll be advancing the state of the youth report. This will be something that we continue to do because we want young people to actually let the government know what's relevant to them, so the government can deliver to them. And I think that's why the demographics, when we talk about in Canada, diversity is our strength. Diversity is, yes, the shells we occupy, but it's also the diversity of perspectives, of experiences, of regions, of where we come from. I look at people like I'm the child of immigrants. My
Yes.
experience is very different than somebody else who wasn't born here or who is four or five or six generations Canadian. And I think that's where we really do need to get into celebrating that diversity and bringing it to the table. And that's why lived realities and lived experiences are so important. And the announcement that was made the other day that I'm so pleased to hear that you were there. The
Yes.
were excellent. We were also voting at the same time. But that's something that community's been asking for a long time. Having community decide where the dollars are gone for programs and services is something that community's been asking for a long time. Having disaggregated data is something that community's been asking for a long time. So what this government is doing is actually not just shelving reports. We're he's been asking for far too long. And
Yeah.
we're saying, let's give it a try. And let's keep checking in because if this isn't the right way and it's not exactly the way we want it, let's course correct and let's
Yes.
make it even better because we are measuring outcomes. We want to ensure that the very people that we say we're fighting for, that we're actually fighting for because we make our decisions on evidence and we make our decisions on science. And I can promise you, we're going to continue collecting that information, and we want to see us collect it from coast to coast to coast. And part of the restart agreement for COVID-19 was actually asking all provinces and territories to
Yeah.
collect disaggregated data so that we made sure that we were aware of who was being left behind, because we need to know that every single person have access to this vaccine because none of us are safe until all of us are safe.
Absolutely. And just on that note too, because I know budget consultations have already started this week, I think going into next week and up to budget presentation time. But we're talking about how much money right now are you asking for the Black community?
So I'm listening to members of many different communities, and including the Black community, to see what works for you. I am not a minister, and we are not a government that believes that we have all the answers. We know that the best natural renewable resource in our country is the people in our country. So we
Yes.
will continue working with Canadians from coast to coast to coast to hear what your priorities are, to hear what we need to advance.
Yes.
Because we want Canadians to succeed, and we mean all Canadians. My Canada is an inclusive Canada,
Yes.
and that's what I am working to build. So when we talk about building back even better right now, I'm talking about building back even better and consciously inclusive.
Okay, the only thing I probably might ask because I see my producer signaling me here is that your volume might be a little down. So if you could speak a little bit up in the camera, everything should be fine. Continuing on that trajectory though, because 200 over 200 million uh, this year. I know that what the community has been pushing for greatly is for real investment, because so many of us frown, essentially, not in uh, a sense to say that we are ungrateful for the 200 million, but 200 million is not capacity building for any industry. There's no industry in Canada, much less a whole subsection of a population that functions in 200 millions. We're talking about billions, we're talking about trillions. And if we're really gonna bring in all avenues, all sectors, all visions, all moving parts of an economy, especially human capital, we have to put a suitable sum on the table. And I'm not by any means asking right now to tell me 2 billion, $3 billion or anything of that sense, but is it somewhere around that 250 million or more? We're currently looking at, based on what you've heard uh, from the community so far.
So I would just say, Romaine, is why we're actually having this conversation is because today you have a government that takes the Black community seriously. And because we actually are bringing out programs and services to ensure that they are culturally aware, to ensure that different communities based on need and realities are being addressed accordingly. And so I actually appreciate your courageousness of asking me a number. I don't know what the budget like, so I'm not going to pretend to give you an answer that's not the truth. I'm going to let you know
Yeah.
that yes, consultations are going on right now. Yes, we want to hear from you so that we can deliver for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Yes, we want to see every segment of the population do better, especially those who have been left uh, behind for far too long. Never forget that this is the government that brought in a new tax bracket by increasing taxes on the wealthiest 1% Canadians and lowering them on middle class Canadians. We are the government that brought forward the Canada Child benefit. We made it tax free by asking the wealthiest 1% of Canadians not to take that benefit and giving it to families with children that need it the most. We are the government that is investing in a Black entrepreneurship program, but not saying that government has all the answers by empowering and enabling leaders within the Black community to not only inform our decision making, but to lead that decision making. And I think even when you look at the programs for Black youth, even if you look at the commitments that we've made for changes to the justice system and every single minister taking these responsibilities seriously, for us, this is not a slogan. It's not a t shirt. It's not just a moment in time. It's the way we build moving forward. Because
Yes.
for far too long, we haven't done it right. So I would say the work that we're it's not something that has a price tag on it only because it's not just about dollars and cents. Yes, money is important, the resources have to be there, but we also have to make sure that those investments are going to where they will deliver those outcomes. And we need the right people at the table. And I'll tell you one more thing, which you know way better than anyone else and everyone listening. There's a lot of people who just don't feel like they belong at the table, or they've thrown in the towel and said, like, I'm not doing this again.
Yes.
So we're also having to repair some of those relationships, build that trust, to bring them in to say, hold on, let's chart a better way forward. And we want to be partners in that work.
Yeah.
We're not the end all be all. We want to partner and work with communities to make sure that people are able to realize their potential and be their true authentic selves.
And being at that table, though, that crucial decision-making table, I know so many parties. We've heard from the Greens, we've heard from the NDP. Really, well, we haven't really heard anything from the PCs, but we've heard from Prime Minister Trudeau coming from 2015, making a valid effort to get Black Canadians into the House of Commons and get Black Canadians into the Senate. And of course, we celebrate Marcy, of course, going in, Miss Ian, 100th woman.
In the House of Commons. So
Yes,
we've got 338 members of parliament. For the first time, we have 100 women occupying those seats, which isn't even half. And so
absolutely.
we're really excited to see Marcy Ian be sworn in the 100th woman within this parliament.
But really, one Black woman, though, and we're talking about Mr. Fergus. Mr. Fergus is there. We do have Mr. Green currently sitting there. And I guess what is the Prime Minister's effort so far in getting more of those Black faces in the House? Not to say that, or fellow like yourself or browns or white Canadians right to also be there and have their voices represented. But we're talking about the underrepresented voices right now. We're talking about those women, Black women, because of course their experience is far different than what I have to experience as a Black male. Right. So, what are those effort likes filling those vacancies that we're trying to win back from, let's say, the NDP trying to win back from the PCs, especially even here in Ontario, BC?
So I can only talk at the federal level,
Yes, please.
provinces and territories or local municipalities. But what I will say is, first of all, federally it's not PCs. They dropped the progressive and they became the Conservative Party of Canada. But that's not the conversation today. We really do need to look at how do we provide that information. I know within the Waterloo region, there's a group of Black leaders who have come together and they are actually providing that information in regards to running in elections at different levels of government, so that and actually peeling back, why are people not putting their names forward, what are the deterrents, and what information is lacking, so that they can actually um, well, walk with others on that journey. Sometimes it's very isolating running for office. I never
Yeah.
thought that I would run for office, but you get a mentor, you get the right information. But I've also been involved in politics since I was 13 years old. And I think, I look at some of the people that were around me at that time and that I got to know along the way, and some of them were Black Canadians. And you ask them, like, why will you not run? And similar to myself, people always told me that a person like me can't win in the riding of Waterloo. I'll have to move. And I refuse to move. But you know what? You can win. And I think that's what I need to do, is continue working with other people and saying, hold on, it is possible. And you do need a good platform, but we can't forget why we're there. We're there to represent our constituents.
Yes.
And I agree with you. Representation matters. For
Yes.
people to see themselves in those seats, to know that they belong there. And I think that's why Marcy Ian being there is very powerful. Mr. Dubourg being there is very powerful. Greg Fergus and Mr. Gree, and the list goes on of people who have been in those seats. But for myself right now, as we are creating opportunities, the
Yes.
one thing I always asked is, historically, we have always divided to lift ourselves up. Right now, let's lift ourselves up and bring people with us. Let's,
Absolutely.
promise to lead the ladder down, so that, the Honorable Jean Augustine, who is, I believe, the only Black woman to have made it to the Canadian cabinet table. When I was sworn in as a Minister of Small Business and Tourism, I was the first Indo-Canadian woman to be sworn into the Canadian cabinet table. And when Anita Anand made it as the Minister of Public Services and Procurement, it was a really exciting day for me, because I
Yes.
went from being the only to the first, and she became the second. And I think that's where it comes down to, is how do we bring more people along? How do we create those opportunities? So for myself, what I'm doing is actually trying to create, and people get to see how hard politics can be, but I also need to let them know how rewarding it can be. And so how do
Absolutely.
I have those conversations? And I think that's where we have to say the struggle is real, and we need to understand why people don't want to be there. But we also need those people to have their voices represented as we develop policy. And the more they are represented around the table, not just figuratively, but like literally, the
Yes.
more we will see people belong. And that's why the government's commitment to the 50-30 challenge, 50% gender parity, 30% diversity for boards across the country for federally regulated. We've even challenged now the private sector to do it.
Yes.
Many different things that we've taken place and done has actually empowered other people. And that's why the first pillar of the anti-racism strategy is federal leadership, because we can't do it alone, but we do have a responsibility and a role to play. And I can promise anyone listening, your leadership of this prime minister is committed to ensuring that we build back even better, which means taking into consideration the people for far too long who have been underserved and underrepresented. And we don't want to do that by serving those communities. We want those communities working with us, and we want to bring you to the tables. And that's why we brought forward an open, transparent, merit based appointment process, so that instead of them being patronage appointments, because we
Yes.
might not know you, you can put your name forward. And if that system's not working, that's part of the mandate I've been taxed with, is actually looking at who's actually putting their names in, who's being called in for an interview, who's being shortlisted. And if the numbers aren't showing, the diversity of our country is not being represented, I have an opportunity to show the systemic issues. And the prime minister did not hesitate to talk about the systemic issues that exist in every single institution in our country from coast to coast to coast. and we are committed to addressing it. But we need all of you to also help us inform it. And sometimes it might be tough, and sometimes you might have an idea that you think is not worth sharing. I assure you, I want to hear it. So please never hesitate to reach out to me and my team, and reach out to your member of parliament as well. Each of us is elected to serve you, and we have to do a better job at representing all of our constituents, whether we agree with them or not. In Canada, diversity is our strength, including the diversity of opinions and perspectives.
Absolutely. And let us just take a spin here before we do run out of time and talk about the State of the Youth report. Because and I've had a chance to read through that document and also provided some insights and on that document, and quite insightful, I must say, as to some of the recommendations which are coming forward from the discussions that I've had. But how essentially will this report inform policies going forward? And we're talking about even getting persons into the workforce using this information. We're talking about getting persons not just going into colleges, but into universities from this report, and some of the barriers that many Black and racialized youth, Indigenous youth might face to really accessing so many of the goodies of society, so to speak.
So what will happen is this is actually youth led. So the way the areas of focus took place was by a consultation, by talking to young people from coast to coast to coast in many different ways. So whether it was an online service survey, whether it was town halls, whether it was round tables, was actually getting into different segments of the youth population and asking young people what's relevant to you, because we know different segments based on who works with government. Oftentimes, if you don't have a vote, you don't feel that you have a say, but you do. I
Yes.
got involved in politics when I was 13 years old. I couldn't vote, but I had an opinion. And I was going to fight for things that, even my family wasn't always comfortable with, because just the way we're raised in culture and whatever else. But they know, for me, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the most important document in my world. And with rights and freedoms come responsibilities. And I'm actually older than the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which tells you these opportunities are very recent. And so it's something that I will never just let go by. So when it comes to the youth people, we wanted to lift them up and hear where they had to go. They gave us 6 areas of interest, and then we actually had consultations. They fed in that information. So currently, that feedback we received from coast to coast to coast is being compiled in the State of the Youth report. And similar to, we have an LGBTQ2 survey out right now.
Yes.
Anybody who's part of the communities, please take time to provide that information before February 28th. It's going to be the first national action plan, so that people from communities, the LGBTQ2 communities, can actually inform the government as to what we need to focus on. And, people will ask me, what have you learned so far? I am going to stay as unbiased as possible, because unconscious biases are real. And so what I've
Yes.
done is continue having my conversations. I am not going to actually say where it stands right now, because I want people to be their true selves and provide that information honestly, so the government can respond. So the State of the Youth report will be information based on young people from coast to coast that have provided us information. We will report on it, and then it will give us a little bit of a synopsis into what young people are really looking for, what their priorities are, and where the government should focus, so that we can actually support them in their journeys to success.
Absolutely. And let us talk about also the recent funding for, of course, the community support multiculturalism and anti-racism initiative. You're actually calling for proposals on that initiative. Uh, just give us a little more insight into how exactly that works, and essentially, what are you looking for?
So the CS Mari program is what you're referring to.
Yes.
The shorter title, so I don't take the whole segment saying the name of it.
CS Maria, absolutely.
It's a little bit more. So basically, what it is, it has three different streams. So it's got the capacity building stream, because capacity building is important. It's something we've heard for decades as a community, saying like it's not just about projects and programs. It's actually about having capacity so we can deliver for the people we serve every single day. It's about the project stream, which are usually longer term projects that will have some focus based on a need or a demand within the community. And then we also have the event stream. So right now for this year, the capacity building as well as the project stream has closed, but the event stream remains open. So if something's taking place, numerous events from coast to coast to coast right now for Black History Month are being funded through the CSMRE program. If you have an event that actually supports the values or the vision of the CSMRE program, you're able to apply as long as it's 18 weeks before the program. And then we're able to send you money. And this program, when it comes to the event stream, is year round. So I would encourage you to check out the website and see that information. And what we actually did was commit to more money for that program so that we can actually create more opportunities. And similar to the Anti Racism Action Program, we were able to actually have a $15 million investment. We invested in 85 programs. And because of COVID-19, we brought these projects together virtually and created a network. Because something that works in your backyard might actually work in another one. But oftentimes,
Absolutely.
country is so massive land mass wise, we're not connected. And so as much as COVID has been challenging and really tough, one of the outcomes that has been good about COVID is the virtual events so we can connect people and people can actually work with each other. And we're seeing that people are now sharing their blueprints to say, we tried this. Here you go. It might work for you. Tweak it for your community. And now instead of being at first base, you're already at third. And that's really about, like, sharing is caring. So I
Yes.
think that's what these programs are really meant to respond to what communities have been asking for, to advance certain priorities, because the reality is that racism, discrimination exists in Canada. Anti-Black, anti-Asian, anti-Indigenous, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, to name a few. But it still exists, and part of it will be federal leadership. Part of it will be empowering and enabling communities, and that's what this money does. And part of it will be education and changing attitudes. Those are the three pillars of the anti racism strategy. That strategy was created by Canadians for Canadians. And that's what we're doing. And when it comes to the State of the Youth report, when it comes to LGBTQ communities, we're going into Canadians' backyards and saying, what do you need the government to do for you? So that we actually work together to build that truly inclusive Canada that we all know exists.
I mean, I could always tell you what the charge is, but just a little self-evaluation for yourself and the government. What do you think your charge is, uh, taking all this away from Black History Month and, of course, from the Black community? What do you think we want you to get on immediately and get done for us?
You let me know. What do you want me to do? What do you want us to get done immediately?
Okay, so first of all, we want for the anti-racism action strategy for that to be fully implemented. We need for the recognitions of the goals for the UN declaration to be achieved. Right, we want for there to be adequate funding for the community. We want for there to be real space created, right, for Black youth to develop, innovate, and get active. We want for us to be included on all the boards and ministries and in the public service as it is. We want for those, even the agricultural sector. Black Canadians aren't involved in the agricultural sectors. How can we get in? Because as you're probably aware, it is very hard to get into the agricultural sector here in Canada. And it's not just us coming in as migrant workers or as low skilled workers, but really getting into some of those ownership levels, having those farms, having those protections, and having those proper trade agreements. What we want is for countries, right? Or some of us, we call them our home countries, right? To have better agreements. We want for even the migrant worker program, that multilateral agreement to be looked at and to be scrutinized, because I think we are aware that on all ends of that agreement, there are significant loopholes that are being taken advantage of. We want for the dignity of all Black persons across the world to be duly want for our humanity to be respected, our ideas to be respected, and of course our communities to be respected and to be given or the opportunity to determine what we want our futures to look like.
So, Robane, I think, we actually are singing out of the same songbook. So we might be using different words and we might have different lists, but when it comes to fully implementing the anti-racism strategy, it's our government that came in 2015 that said we needed a strategy. It wasn't our government that got rid of the anti-racism secretariat.
Yes.
We might want to actually look at the history of our country. We all talking about our history, but
Yeah.
when it comes to supporting parties or supporting platforms, where is that accountability? It can't just be on the government of the day that is actually trying to build back what we've lost, and we never should have lost. So yes, the strategy, we're committed to fully implementing it. It is a 3-year strategy, and it's an evergreen document. And what we heard in the speech from the throne was actually a redoubling of that commitment. When it comes to the UN decade, it's this government that recognized the decade. It's this government that's made investments in different programs, and we have put that money has flown, and it's flown in a way that no government before us has allowed it to flow. And when it comes to your list was long, the agricultural sector, we've been able to see what the temporary foreign worker program looks like. We've been able to see that reality, but it really does take people having the confidence in the system to be able to give true feedback. And I think that's where I am really close to the immigration processes. My parents, as I told you, immigrated here.
Yes.
So Minister Mendocino is on that, and he's working closely with Minister Qualtrough. We welcome your feedback as to a way that that program could work. But to believe that every single person who comes here, to work in the agricultural sector temporarily wants to be here permanently isn't true either. And I
Yes.
think that's where, when it comes to that diversity of perspectives, we do have to respect that. When it many different areas, I can promise you our visions are the same.
Absolutely. And I want to just say the first thing is thank you, because the first step towards really achieving change is recognizing the problem. And we appreciate the government for recognizing that there's a problem. The second thing is trying to develop strategies. That's the second way to eradicate the problems that we do identify. Identifying those problems, speaking to the persons who are actually experiencing these from various different angles and perspective, and of course putting together a strategy of how to fix them. So I must commend you on that, and I must say thank you so much for having joined me here today.
Romaine, I'm just going to take one more second and let you know it's a whole of government approach. We can't work
Yes.
in silos, and that's why it's important that every single minister work closely together. And that's one of the things that the prime minister set out. And that's why that mandate letter that you refer to, the only reason you get to refer to it is because for the first time we make them public. We're not
Yes.
hiding these documents. We're saying you deserve to know what we're working on because we want to work on it with you. I know we're out of time, but I just want to say this has been truly a treat. I look forward to future opportunities, and like, never be a stranger. Anyone who's listening, if you've got thoughts to share, ideas to share, want to have a conversation, please know that me and my team are never far away. And just the COVID reality is still here. We're not out of the woods yet. The strains and variants that are coming are causing a lot of anxiety and stress. We do have the Wellness Together portal. Do take time to check out what resources are available for you. Please take care of yourselves, keep well and safe, and just know that I'm thinking about you. And we are all going to build back even better and consciously inclusive. I know we can do it.
And I'm positive sure that, of course, with the capacities that we do have in our communities across Canada and the capacity that Canada has, we will for sure build back wonderfully. Green, we will flourish build back efforts. But of course, I want to thank the Minister Bardish Jager, for having joined us here on our Black History Month kickoff show, to say the least. But of course, lovely having you here. And I do hope that you come back and join us in the future. There. But of course, we'll take a very second break here on the show and be right back with so much more. See
Keep
you
on.
later.
Thank you.
You can officially download our free GBKM app from the App Store and the Google Play Store, okay? Now, what is the best thing about this app? Well, it is that you have all of the features from the website that is portable, in your hand, ready to use and ready to go. Now, I'm just gonna guide you through what we have available on our app right now. So here, this is the page where you can watch our live TV, our GBCam TV. You can watch live, enjoy the shows live. Now, if you go to our tabs, you can check out any shows you missed in the past shows tab, and that takes you to the past shows that have happened in the last week. And if you just scroll down, you can see those past shows in order, chronological order, with their dates next to them as well. So if you've missed a show, no worries, just go to the past show tab and you can catch up on your favorite GBKM entertainment. Going back to our menus tab again, you can check out our upcoming shows so you do not miss any past shows. You can check out our breaking news section, which is our newest section as well, to learn of any breaking news within the diaspora, across the globe, all of that good stuff, so you can stay engaged and up to date on what's going on with our breaking news tab on the GBKM app, and also available on the website. And as you can see, there are other tabs there. You can listen to our live radio, our live TV. You can learn more about our on-air personalities by going to our OAP tab, all of that good stuff.
And of course, welcome back to the You Turned Up Show right here on GBK MFM. Of course, I'm your host, Ramin Redman. And if you're just joining us, you only missed the first half of today's show, but don't worry, still so much more here. And of course, our videos are always posted to our platform. Don't forget, it's on Facebook at GBKM TV. You can also get us on YouTube, GBKM TV. Don't forget, we're also on our app, which is the newest addition to our platform, which you can get from the Apple Store or the Android Store if you have an Android device. And the same features that you're used to on each of our platforms, they've just been combined together in one platform that you can take with you wherever you go in the world. So, as I promised at the top of the hour, my very special guest in this half is, of course, President of the Ontario Black History Society, Miss Natasha Henry. Miss Henry, welcome to the show.
Charmaine, thanks for having me.
Well, I must say it's an absolute pleasure having you here. Help us to kick off our Black History Month celebration. And we're best to start than with the preserver of our history and, of course, an influential part of our community in ensuring that we not only celebrated pride in Black history, but also our identity in general.
Yes, and thanks again. It's great that we are still able to, and we are ensuring that we continue to mark Black History Month 2021, despite the limitations due to the global pandemic. It is an important time for us to recognize and honor our ancestors. It's important for us to come together and continue to raise awareness around not only the our historical presence and experiences, but also very much about what is happening today in our Black communities. It's very much connected to our past, and so and then another element to that is that we feel that it's very important for us to remember that we all have a role to play in documenting and sharing our history. And so as we see how things have unfolded over the course of last spring and last summer, that we know that we are in the midst, we're always in the midst of history. Every day is
Yes,
history.
absolutely.
We are still in these historical moments that call on us to record this and to preserve our stories and our perspectives. And so, Black History Month 2021 is continuing on the tradition, but it's also unique in the sense that, there's a bit more of a demand on us this year.
Exactly. And I actually want to get to that demand because it's a very great demand from where I sit, but I would love to get that from your perspective. But just before we dive into that, though, a successful launch it was for the annual kickoff brunch. And last year we had the privilege of joining you uh, in the big grandness of celebrating Black persons here in Canada and across Ontario. But the launch, congratulations on the successful launch. And let us talk about that demand that is there because we've seen throughout last year this global movement to
Mhm.
have an end to some of the ills which prevents full inclusion, to prevent diversity, and to prevent anti-Black racism in the world. So, what is the urgency then in this year's message?
Mhm. Yes, and thank you. Our Black History Month, our virtual kickoff this year went really well, and it's great to have a bit of a celebratory tone and opportunity to build community. Um, it also, as I was saying earlier, we're also at the time where there is this sense of urgency, and it really, for me, the 2021 Black History Month really demonstrates the connections and the importance of reflecting on the past to understand our present. And when you mentioned, the uprisings over the course of this past of 2020, the demands to racism, anti-Black racism, police brutality. in order for us to really understand what that means today, we have to be able to contextualize that into and in our historical past. And it helps us to see, where things were, what are some of these historical roots, and what then needs to be done in order to uproot that and to change the trajectory, the outcomes, often the disparities, right, that
Yes.
Black Canadians face. And so this year, it is much more than about the celebratory tone, but it's about what is being done between last year and this year. What have organizations, what have institutions, what have the government, right, different levels of
Yes.
government done in very tangible ways to improve the conditions and the lives of Black Canadians, recognizing that the outcomes that today are grounded in a particular history. And so it really, as I said, we are here this month to continue to learn and to raise awareness, but we should be and we have to demand much more in terms of transformational change and deep impact for our youth, for our seniors. We only need to look at the disproportionate impact of COVID. The frontline workers are tend to be highly racialized in some of these professions, and women, right, are highly being raised a number of months and years ago. These things still continue through Black History Month this year
Absolutely.
and through this year. And so I want us to that and understand how they should be working in tandem and not separate and apart.
Wonderful. And I love that you touched on the point that what should the government do and what has the government failed to do. And I guess trying to play the devil's advocate here, they would say that we gave 200 over 200 million during the summer. We did establish the anti-racism strategy. We did do the workforce evaluation. We do have the GBA plus out there. What else should we add to that?
Mhm. Well, when policies and programs are developed in response to some of the issues that we talked about, what is very important is that these things are monitored and they're evaluated in terms of their impact and their effectiveness. It's not just merely about throwing money away, throwing money to a cause. And if you're putting money into something, but the structures that have created the initial barriers are not removed, are not alleviated, then you're still going to be reproducing this right similar
Yes.
outcomes. And if this funding is one off, for example, those long lasting uh, disparities will continue. And so there has been some funding. I would have like to see more connections in terms of the anti-racism strategy, the International Decade for People of African Descent, and understanding that some of these things and weaving them together really as a strong, effective way to reduce some of the issues and the barriers that we talked about over the course of, I think, the past about a month ago. There was a program by the federal government, Employment Services, to fund um, Black organizations who were facing challenges due to COVID and that they were serving the community. And so, however, with the delays and responses and then the decisions in terms of which organizations received funding, it just came about that that whole process or somehow is flawed. There's a concern with that
Yes.
because a number of organizations, Black organizations, including the Ontario Black History Society, did not receive funding. Some organizations, not ours, got an initial letter that said they could not verify that their leadership of their organization was Black enough, to paraphrase it. And so,
Before you go on from that point, what do you mean black enough? Explain to us what that black enough term means.
well, what it in the application process, you're asked to designate a percentage of the leadership of your organization that identifies as Black.
Okay.
And so I guess that is what they would have used, right, to determine and make their decision. And so I can't respond for the government in terms of how they evaluated if organizations said that they were 100% Black and then they then determined that somehow they weren't. I can't speak for their end, but again, so if this program was really grounded in the anti-racism strategy, grounded in the goals of the International Decade for People of African Descent, then what should have happened is that a lot of these organizations, the Black organizations, then should have received some level of support, right? As a way again to spread that support across. And so I don't think that there's a lot of connections in that regard. And we often see that with government programs that they're kind of part and parcel, or they're in silos. And in order to alleviate the outcomes of anti-Black racism, these things need to be more substantive. And I think we see how that, this is only one example of how that happens.
Absolutely. I like the insights that you of course shared there, because not only did you say what is the government doing, what should the government do, but you also alluded to a fact earlier that we individually too and collectively in society we do have a role to play, as we said at the top of the hour. Also,
Mhm.
preserving history in our hand. It's not just about your entire Black History Society, but what is our individual role? What is our collective role as groups, organizations, citizen families?
Hmm. Absolutely. And we illustrated that with our Black History Month kickoff this year. Our theme is History Who We Are. And so we did a number of things to show that all of us are part of history every day, and all of us can contribute to preserving and sharing our histories. We highlighted and recognized community organizations and businesses who have done so much during COVID to help support our community. We profiled the personal stories of 4 of our board members. We all have stories, and what can we do to record our personal stories, our family stories? Oftentimes we don't get those tidbits from, we forget to record and document from our elders and our families. And those are the kinds of things that we can do to share our story. We all have devices, we have cell phones that we can record interviews, make videos. We can, in this digital age, we can digitize materials and documents and make them available, and to share them. And so, history is not just in the purview of the professional historian or society. We are all history, and we all contribute to history. And so we think about, what is it that we want to leave for our young people and for our community, that really demonstrates the depth and the richness of our lives here in Canada.
Wonderful. And the fun thing about that too is celebrating history, celebrating legacy. Because there are some Black Canadians whose history go as far back as the Underground Railroads, even before then, right? And that history we don't always hear about, right?
Mhm.
But we also go back to those influential, and we say influential Black people because we know about the Jean Augustine, the Doctor Honorable Doctor Jean Augustine. We know about the Sir Winston Alexander. We know about the Viola Desmonds and all those persons. But what I think we are not celebrating as much, and some people don't even realize, is that frontline workers. We have so many racialized person, Black individuals in frontline work. We're talking about those who ensure Canada's food security, and they deserve their celebration too.
Yes, yes. And so just continuing from, the event the other day, we honored frontline workers, and we are undergoing a project to document some of their stories. Because as I said, earlier, there are, a high number of Black women and other racialized women working on the front lines as personal support workers, nurses, and whatnot. And these everyday stories don't often get captured. We want to record and share histories, as well as we talked about generations of Black Canadians. We profiled the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. There are a few historical sites still in existence that we could visit. We could take a
Yes.
trip and learn about this history and share it with our young people and our families. And these things are being made available through some virtual tours. And so we want to recognize all of what encompasses our communities. Black teachers, Black mechanics. We just have, people who are living their lives. The migrant workers who come from Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean and who play a crucial role in our food supply. These are important stories for us to document and to share and to remember. And so that is all of what we want to demonstrate is important, as just as much as the political and legal and business contributions from our community members.
I also love that you just touched on the migrant worker program. And those, of course, crucial persons, integral individuals who farm is a bedrock. Right now, we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic how much their service was really thrust into some who didn't know of how, and I don't want to say didn't know as in the information wasn't there, or might have just not been in their rear view, been in their purview. And so instrumental these individuals are to the survival of Canadian society. And I tie this back to because last year, while we were talking to you in regards to the Ontario Black History Society launch, you mentioned something that a role is to preserve and, of course, disseminate information. But that's not only the only role that you have. As I said, with great information comes great responsibility. You've had to take on the activist role. You've had to be that instrumental community leader in terms of pushing policies, pushing social programs, and, of course, pushing voices.
Yes, it is a commitment to advocacy to improve our communities. As I said, the past is inextricably connected to our present, and what we work to embody every day. And so while we talk about, 1858, for example,
Yes.
it's very much about still 2021. And so, it's really important. We want, some of the things that we are actively pushing for in our role is to have mandated learning expectations on Black history in the Ontario curriculum, of which there are none to date, to honor the 400-year presence of African peoples here in Canada. We are also actively, working towards realizing a museum and cultural space, a permanent space for the Ontario Black History Society and for this museum and archive space, again, as a way to contribute to that. And so all of that is part of activism and community building. And it's a very important central role that we play.
Absolutely, and love you touched on curriculum. You're currently a PhD candidate working in the fields of or research in the field of curriculum building and education and all that stuff. So I guess the question that I have is, what should young people be learning in school? Not just Black young people, but all Canadian young people be learning in school. And I want you to break that curriculum down for me from K through to 12. What does that look like?
Mhm. Well, I mean, there are different subjects. So each subject area has a curriculum, an official curriculum that identifies things that students should learn. And so there is that what is taught around Black experiences, Black contributions, Black achievements is pretty much left up to the individual teachers to do so. There are some suggestions in some curriculum documents. However, these are just suggestions. And so as from kindergarten all the way through to high school, students should be learning much more about Black contributions, past and present. They need to learn about it better represents Canada as always being a diverse place, and that there have been different groups who have contributed to the building of this country throughout our history. The one thing that has been echoed from young people and adults alike, parents, is that they feel that they're not learning enough about the history of colonialism, understanding of race and racism, that they want to dig deeper into current events, things that are happening today, and be able to ground them in the past as well. And so this has been echoed by young people, not just Black people, young people, but just young people in general. And we saw that taken up in a lot of the demonstrations that young people led and participated in over the course of the summer. And so young people have also been calling for changes to the curriculum, for there to be an improvement, really to help to develop a critical consciousness to help move our society in a better direction.
Wonderful. And of course, curriculum is just one part of it too. But when we talk about those systems, which of course hinders true inclusion, I know the minister spoke at length about really dismantling those systems. But we haven't seen any systematic disruption since last year. We've seen the funds. And we are grateful for the funds. I mean, we do have quite a healthy, innovative community in the Black community. That is, we do have quite a healthy mind pool in terms of knowledge, right? But those systems that need to go, what are those systems that need immediate fixing right now? And how do we actually fix those?
And they're all interconnected, right? Education is connected to child welfare, is connected to the justice system, right? All they're interconnected and feed off of each other to create some of the conditions and the outcomes that particularly historically marginalized groups face, and Black Canadians do fit into that. We know that there's disproportionate representation of Black children in child welfare. We talk about people in the criminal justice system. And so again, yes, funding is always important. Implementing systemic change requires resourcing of funding, people who are capable of helping to lead this change. And it also, again, it does tie back to our past, because we have to recognize that we are living in the remnants of colonial institutions. And we have to be aware of that in order to change what it is that we want to change. And so that could be from curriculum, that could be, from a range of things. And it's an ongoing process, but it's absolutely necessary. We know that the conditions of the global pandemic has compounded the efforts in order to move systemic change in education, but and many people have said that it should not, by no means, sideline the work that needs to continue to be done in order to affect change for our children in the educational system. And so that could look like some of the things that have been identified: the curriculum, hiring more teachers, more Black teachers, for example, strong accountability measures, thinking again the role of public office, what that plays in the in public education as well. Do we have representation of trustees that are supportive of our cause and of our issues of our children as well? These are all important things that need to be worked out in tandem. And so these are just a few minor things, a few small things I could point out quickly, but it's comprehensive, it's expansive. We have to also reimagine what it is that we want to see for education and for our society, and we have to actively work together towards that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you for absolutely coming through here on the show with us. So much that we have learned.
You're welcome. My pleasure being with you, Romaine. Hopefully I can be back again.
Definitely 100%. That's a guarantee. But of course, to you here at home, thank you so much for joining us this week. I want to say a huge shout out to my for getting us set up away from this week. And of course, a huge shout out to my sponsor, Immigration Canada. Don't forget to specialize all your immigration needs, ranging from the domestic testing program, the residency, the caregiver program, student visa, whatever you need, they have you covered. covered. So of course, you can send them an email. It's 461-629. Yes, or info@aosimmigration.com, and I will let you know. Of course, as we always like to say, the next time, 3 p.m. right here on FM, same host, me, Redmond. Just keep reaching, keep achieving, and of course, keep changing the world. See you next week.
You can officially download our free GBKM app from the App Store and the Google Play Store, okay? Now, what is the best thing about this app? Well, it is that you have all of the features from the website that is portable, in your hand, ready to use and ready to go. Now, I'm just gonna guide you through what we have available on our app right now. So here, this is the page where you can watch our live TV, our GBKM TV. You can watch live, enjoy the shows live. Now, if you go to our tabs, you can check out any shows you missed in the past shows tab, and that takes you to the past shows that have happened in the last week. And if you just scroll down, you can see those past shows in order, chronological order, with their dates next to them as well. So if you've missed a show, no worries, just go to the past show tab and you can catch up on your favorite GBKM entertainment. Going back to our menus tab again, you can check out our upcoming shows so you do not miss any past shows. You can check out our breaking news section, which is our newest section as well, to learn of any breaking news.
KMFM, of course, I'm your host, Redmond.